Hi, welcome to valuationpodcast.com, a podcast and video series about all things related to business and valuation. My name is Melissa Gragg, and I provide divorce, mediation, and valuation services in St. Louis, Missouri. Today, we will actually discuss environmental, social, and governance policies, or ESG policies, and its effect on valuations with Mark Zyla. Mark Zyla is a valuation expert in Georgia, and he's the managing director of Zyla Valuation Advisors, an Atlanta valuation and litigation consulting firm. He's also the chairman of the Standards Review Board for the International Valuation Standards Council. He was also one of the primary authors of the education program that the AICPA and the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors for the Credential, which is Certified in Entity and Intangible Assets, or the CEIV, which basically certifies valuation professionals in the valuation for financial reporting purposes. This is part of this CEIV credential. So is this credential going to start to address some of these things like in the framework? Because I think, at a minimum, we can say if you're in this line of work, you need to have questions. You need to be asking them about it. You need to say, what is your policy? What is the impact of your policy? What is your action items of the policies? What are, and in some capacity, like, are you even monitoring this? Like, okay, you say you're going to have diversity and you say a goal, but is anybody monitoring it? Is anybody paying attention? Have you reached like, to me, it's sort of like how private equity comes in and says, okay, did you meet your goals? Did you hit your first milestone and things like that? Like, are we seeing that the CEIV credential kind of gives some framework for us, or is it all kind of a work in process?
From that perspective, it's a work in process. But I think what valuation specialists should think about is the impact of these issues on overall valuation of entities, but specifically as it relates to valuations and financial reporting, measuring the fair value of intangible assets. Mm-hmm. And clearly these, for what we've seen and the empirical data is showing is that does have an impact on intangible assets, which relates directly to the CEIV credential.
Yeah. And the reality is that you have to internally quantify it, but you're also saying that there are resources coming out. So just sitting back and being like, well, I don't know if it really does anything. That's not the case anymore. There is data, but then in your own edification, you have to see, okay, we're valuing these trademarks, these patents, this name and things like that. And in the value of that, mm-hmm. right? Because, we have to also put that piece in. So it's sort of like, if you're not including it as, part of your template, if you will, of things that you cover, you might be missing something that's pretty significant.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's something to think about when you're doing your work. Is just add it to your issues that you think about when you're doing evaluation, because it's becoming more and more important.
And start to reach out in some capacity. Obviously, I believe that if people are doing financial reporting, that you should be consistent with it and know what you're doing. But this is another area that if you are in this space and you are not giving a lot of thought to ESG, there may be an issue there. Mm-hmm. And it's going to continue to be an issue. Now, if we have other people that are on the podcast that do have more questions about this, because it's not really my specialty, they could reach out to you. And I think that this is what's going to start happening, even if it's not happening now. It needs to happen more often, because, we as valuation experts need to also help promote the valuation profession, right? And so in some capacity, if people are doing a lot of this work and they're like, ESG, not doing a lot about that. They could reach out to you. Could you tell us more about like your firm and where you're focusing? Because again, if you're doing financial reporting, I think you have to connect with other people around the country that are also doing it, because there's a lot of places that you can mess it up. I don't want to sound scary, but I think there are, right?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think just valuation specialist, has particular impact on valuations for financial reporting just because of the nature of the valuation of intangible assets, but it's eventually impacting all types of valuations just because of the nature. And so as a specialist, again, just be aware that, of the trend, but also it's coming on pretty quickly, and you will start seeing more guidance from the accounting standard setters. We'll probably see better measurement of impact of ESG, and therefore it's going to assist us in our work in measuring the financial valuation impact of these policies. And so just be aware of that's occurring. Start thinking about when you're doing valuations, perhaps asking questions, get a better understanding of a company's policies. And, there's some things that, you can provide advice to your clients that, if your client is not focused on this, that it may impact, long-term viability. They may not be as competitive in the future. So that's, consideration of potential cash flow, potential risk. So it's just right now an awareness stage, but it's coming pretty quickly, and it's something that the profession is working with other standard setters through organizations like the IVSC and providing a voice of valuation impact on these policies.
But also, I think getting involved, I think that, we've clearly identified that you are involved in national associations, and so am I. And I think that, if this is important, and I think that environmental and social things are of even more importance right now, given the climate and such, that if it is important and you're doing this type of work, that one way to stay kind of ahead of the game, if you will, is to start putting your time into some of these boards and to get involved, because it's going to take input from people who are actually doing the work to make sure that, because in my mind, absolutely you would encounter this in financial reporting, but is it really just a trickle down effect, right? We talk about authenticity in marketing and putting yourself out there, right? Just as whoever you are. And isn't that really a form of authenticity for the company? We're going to put our money where our mouth is, and these are the places that we deem it important. I don't know if we're always asking about those things in a regular valuation, and as they become important for publicly held companies, the trickle down effect is that because I think it's going to raise the standard. Sure. I think you're not going to have, like, we can just sit back and make profits and do nothing. Right? There's going to be sort of a requirement for you to do something more if you're going to, utilize people to make money or products or any of those things. Then you need to start giving back to those same communities or populations in general.